really good at slapdick meets, you know, and then they get into pressure meets and they look exhausted. Like they look pretty good early and then they just fall apart later. Well, they didn't get out of shape from the meet the week before where nobody was there and they were on a roll. And to this meet where there's the gunners and there's pressure, they didn't get out of shape in 7 days. It's just what they did in that meet with their panic response exhausted them. And that's the trap Jill's in. She's real nervous and anxious and things haven't been going well and her chemistry's all whacked, so she takes 6 vaults, she's just friggin' exhausted. Because there's no chemistry inside of her to reboot, so she's operating at a deficit. Then she goes to a meet, you know, like New York, where 3 straight hurricanes. She told me in an email, she goes, I was exhausted after warm-ups. I was like dead. So it's part of the reason why when you guys travel to Europe and you come back, your thyroid panels crashed, your hormone panels crashed because stress. And what will happen is we've done maps on our guys when they're in Europe and they're on a roll and whatnot, and they come back and we look at their panel, it's not as suppressed. But when they're over there and they're fighting some injuries or some bad weather or they're not real confident, they come back, the panel's like a standard deviation below. You know, like with Anson, he travels in May, goes international, and then he travels again late June to August, or late June to early July. Then he travels in August. And some years the panel's gotten better as the season went on because he was figuring things out and he got healthy, and very few people have an uplift in panels, but he's been in the system long enough that he can. And last year he got hurt, and by the end of September, I mean, he was not even on the map chemically. Where the year before it was like this. So that nervous energy and the energy that we use for subconscious movements is influenced by your paradigm. So we're trying to make it simple for you, you know, on the approach. Do your hoopy-doo, push for 2, you know, step over, get the running mechanics right. Is there some stuff we need to work on the run? Yeah, but that's all the energy you can afford right now.
Right.
All right? We've got a plan idea going to get you out of this. All right? So with you thinking about stepping over in this, that's about all the energy we can expend right now on the runway. All right? The next thing is this is costing you a lot of energy because when you swing, you got to contort and do tons of shit to catch the pole. All right? So if we can get you to dislocate both arms and stay neutral and just keep the weight on the top hand, it's going to reduce your energy expenditure every vault by 50%. So if you take 5 warm-up jumps and 12 jumps in a meet, you're going to have double the energy at the end of that meet than you would if you're locking out and having to figure all kinds of shit out subconscious.
Yeah.
Can you follow that a little bit?
Yeah, I do. I mean, already just what we've changed in my run already. I mean, it used to be like for vaulting long, you know, I'd feel like I'd really have to be rested the day before because, you know, I need to have all that energy to run. Where doing what you and I have been working on, it's so much easier. I didn't know that it could be easy.
Well, it's like Carly, you know, she went to this meet over in Livermore, and the first section didn't go real well, and she goes, I'm going to move my run back. So she should be tired. She laid around, and it was cold, and she laid around 3 hours, had to re-warm up and all that, and went back to a longer run and PR'd by 6 inches.
Yeah.
This is yesterday?
No, this was at the meet last Saturday.
Oh, okay.
So by all physiological, biochemical constructs, she should have been exhausted. And she was emotional after the first meet because it didn't go well. You know, all these things that strip you. She was set up for failure and exhaustion. But she moved it back, worked on a few things with the run, and because the run was more correct than what she's used to using, she was burning about half the energy that she normally used on her run. And then we were playing a little bit with pole drop and position, so she was burning half the energy on getting the pole into the box. That's a huge energy gain.
Yeah.
And then some shit started working, so the adrenals kick in. So even though she was at a deficit, she had something in the tank, it kicked in, and she could keep going. Her and Becky probably took 30 vaults that day. Between the warm-ups, just through increased mechanical efficiency. Becky was all over the place the first meet, finally got the run dialed in on the last miss. Comes out the second meet, got the run dialed in, she vaulted friggin' every vault right. You know, more right. So a lot of the things that we do are subconscious. And everybody thinks some subconscious movements don't cost energy. You know, it costs a lot of energy.
But before we move in, we're going to put rubber down.
And how complex is the corrections, subconscious? It's like Becky. She's been taught that if she really screams those last 6 steps, that she's bringing it. By cranking like that and not covering ground, it's costing her a lot of energy. And that's all at a subconscious level. Until we bring it up, she's not aware that she's doing it. So, like I talked to her after the first meet where everything was a dial. And she was like, God, you know, each vault I felt more and more tired. And the second meet, where she should be tired, every vault she was like, I feel better than the last vault. And that was all going on subconscious. So if you can eliminate things that you're doing consciously, and you can eliminate things that you're having to correct subconsciously, then you're a lot healthier athlete. Vault to vault, day to day, meet to meet. Yeah. All right. When are you coming back?
Tuesday, okay?
Yep. Okay.
Because I came Monday.
Gifts that God gave me is to look at a scheme that an athlete's using and say, okay, what's the worst cancer? What's the second worst cancer? When you came being sideways, running with your feet 45 degrees, with all butt kick and no knee lift, those were pretty severe cancers. A, they get you injured. B, the run's real inconsistent that way. And C, I couldn't stand to watch it. So, you know, that's why we picked those things. And then the next thing was like, how do we get out of this? And discussing it and doing a couple jumps, you had it. And that's the thing I was telling Brad the other day. Sometimes, because everybody thinks, well, if I got to make this change, I need 8,000 reps to make a change. Sometimes when you catch a biomechanical truth, you learn it in 1 rep. Swing coaches do it all the time at the driving range. You know, you're slicing. They'll say, okay, I want your hands here. I want a little more inside on the takeout. And boom, it's straight as an arrow. And you do it 10 times in a row. 1 friggin' cue, because it got you onto your true swing plane, corrected the whole swing. Now, does it stay corrected? No, because that cue only has a life of X attempts. And then a new virus in the swing will show up, and that's why you keep going to the swing coach, because he keeps eliminating viruses. And there's nothing more sophisticated and timing oriented than a golf swing. So, you know, I think it behooves us to look at the neuropsychology of the teachers of golf swings, to look at how we're manipulating skill in our event. Because the real finite stuff is golf swings, a basketball shot, you know, things, a tennis serve, a tennis ground stroke. These are things that voluntarily it's happening so fast you can't control it. So it's at that subconscious fascial communication warp speed. And so what we found through that research is you got to have landmarks, so the computer runs between these landmarks at the subconscious level. And the less viruses and molehills and moguls that we have between those landmarks, the more effective that communication is. And the less likely it is we're going to have to go in there and de-virus shit along the way.
Has Oshman come out with any more stuff?
Yeah, he's got
Lots more?
He's about to lay a bomb on some people. This next book.
Okay.
So you're going to see Craig?
Yeah, I'll be at the gym.
All right. So keep checking with first. I think that we work on is this. And then I think this is going to be a lot easier. I mean, you can manufacture this right now.
Right.
And that's okay. Sometimes you got to plant seeds.
Right. It's
But I
still,
think
like,
as soon as
late,
you,
though,
yeah.
as I'm coming off the pole,
Yeah.
so it's really not that helpful.
But I'd rather it be late because if you're rowing, you're going to be really eccentric.
Right.
That's just physics. And you are so long levered with such a long swing on the backside that this is going to cost you even more than like a Becky who's short. Go, if Becky's here, she can turn it through the hoop.
Right.
If you're here, you're here. Because of the lever difference. It's just physics. It's just vectors.
Yeah.
So even this at the top as you're coming through, even if it's late and you get it in here as you're coming around, it's still going to change your eccentric Q angle.
Right.
It won't put you here,
No.
but instead of here, it'll put you there. But I think you'll find that as soon as you learn that this is a brace, and that both arms move harmonically to keep the weight low on the metronome, that this action's going to almost fall into place. The only reason it wouldn't is if you try to use muscles in that arm.
Right.
See, it always amazes me. I watch Brad swing up on a stiff pole, tight as a friggin' drum. I see people all the time. They just put their weight on their top hand and they swing about it. And they know to get close to the pole, so without even thinking, that arm just folds to let them get tight. And I'm like, dude, you've already got the program in your body. And it's even easier on a bent pole because the pole turns sideways, your hand's right here. This distance is a lot less than on a stiff pole. So it isn't hard. I mean, you can make it hard.
I like to make it as hard as possible.
But I think hopefully you can see on the film the running's way better.
Feels way better. Even watching it, still I can see how I'm cutting short out here. Even though it feels, when I'm running, it feels like I'm running like this.
Yeah, well, most of your life you spent running back here, sideways.
Grabbing on the runway.
You did a series of fall forward, correct myself, fall forward, correct myself,
Yeah.
which is pretty tiring.
Proved to be decent.
I mean, you can do all kinds of stuff and jump relatively high, but if you want to jump even higher and be more consistent,
That's what
then
I
you got to
like
get
to do.
closer to the model.
That's what I like. That's why I'm here.
One of the beauties of being the journey that I've been on is I coach everything. Hammer, tennis, bobsleigh, golf, you name it, I've coached it. And I study athletes, their mindset, their energy expenditures and all that. And when people are on a roll, they have very few thoughts.
Yeah.
They're working on one or two things.
Yeah.
They're really trusting flow state. They're into rhythms. When they talk to me, I hear things like, I felt this, I felt the flow, I felt getting, they talk rhythmatically instead of, I did this and then I had to do this. And when I hear an athlete at a big meet giving me a laundry list, I'm like, oh man, we're in trouble, because they're not in flow state.
Yeah.
Like you've had vault workout, like that one day we were out here and we were really working on that and it was just going, that was a flow state workout. You had one thing you were working on. And the plant was shitty and the run was off a little bit, but you were on a roll and you got out of the way, and I mean, we were really getting shit done.
Yeah.
Flow state cost us less. And that's where the greatest performances are. If you think back to some of your good meets, you were working on one or two things, like in New York. Poles were late, plane was screwed up, everything that could go wrong, headwinds, but we had this little idea we were going to work on.
Yeah.
get the run going, and then boom. So you simplify, and you PR'd in bad conditions. You know, and I think, being the logical guy I am, okay, they see that. And then they come back from the meet, well, let's work on this, and let's work on this, and then we got to fix this, and we got to fix this. I'm like, well, last meet, you worked on this, and it went pretty well.
Well, because now we need to work on the things that make the next bars happen.
Now, here's another thing I've learned. You have to build a platform of vaults at a certain bar before you jump big. You know, you got to have a platform to launch up. Now, because you've got some radical viruses, you could have that green summer where it just goes like that. But generally, like Brad will tell you, if you get a bunch of 590s under your belt, 580s, you know, then 6 doesn't look so far. But if you're 590 1 week, 550 1 week, 560 1 week, 6 looks way out there. So there's an incubation period for skill to settle in and coordinate.
Well, I feel like I got a 40 platform. Now we need to be more like 60 platform.
You know.
Like tomorrow. I don't feel like it's too much to ask.
Well,
And
you show me shoulders like Ty the next meet, and I'll show you 60.
that's what we'll do.
I'll bet you.
Starting tomorrow.
So Carly was having problems with is always going into a meet wanting to jump a certain height.
Yeah.
I never go in trying to think
Never
that.
works.
But you're thinking about 60 right now, all day. 60,
Well,
I'm
I-
60 jump, I'm 70 jump.
But because that's the bar to
Yeah.
get the meat.
The more pressure you put on that bar that gets you into the meets, the less likely you're gonna have a good shot at that bar.
Yeah,
You're gonna
that's
overdo
true.
it.
And you know what? When I jumped 54 at New York, I didn't even know what the bar was at. Knew that my name was getting called and I was first up and it was my turn.
There you go. Sometimes stupid is bliss.
No. And then I made the bar. And the guys were over there and Beatrice who was helping me asked, what was that at? I don't know. I didn't. And that's probably why I made it. If I knew it was at 54, I probably would have tried too hard.
Run hard.
Would have not made it. But we were also working on that thing and the other bars. At least my previous bar before that one was a good vault. And even the first 64 was a good technical vault, according to him. And it felt good. Just as good as, I guess, for having stiff shoulders.
Oh, I mean, I've seen guys lock out both shoulders, you know, clear 580.
Yeah.
But then
I mean, why make it hard when you don't have to?
Then, you know, 2 meets later, their shoulders like destroyed and their back's blown up.
Yeah. Do you think that when you start fixing things like that, you can even jump higher on smaller poles?
Yep.
Yes.
It's just efficiency.
Because
I think there's no reason like you can't clear 470 on a 14-foot pole.
Yeah.
I mean, what's your biggest differential like on a 510 pole? You jump 6 or 595?
I've only been on, since I graduated from college, I've only been on 520s, but I hold down on quite a bit. But I mean, Paul Burgess is the only person ever clear 6 meters on a 5-meter pole. I mean, that's my PR, and I'm basically over gripping. I mean, you could say, because technically I'm not nearly as efficient. He's got a
Jacob jumped when he jumped 590, he was on a 5-meter pole.
Yeah. Well, look at Tommy. Tommy's like, you just asked, can a smaller pole make me jump higher? Tommy's been on a 5'10", 11.6, and he just jumped a lifetime best on a 5-meter 12.8 or 12.6. If you understand flex numbers, the difference between those two poles is insane, and he just had a lifetime PR. So that's crazy, like literally.
Because Tommy is starting to understand that we're going to use the grip height and the flex that his injuries and his ability to run that day promote the best jump. He's slowly getting out of the bigger grip, bigger pole is going to mythically get me to a bigger bar.
Yeah, I guess I've always taken the approach of my actual vault is crap, so I should just hold high on bigger poles, and that's how I keep up with the race.
That'll work to a point.
Yeah, I feel like that works too.
Until the race got to 5 meters.
6. Yeah.
Once
It
the race
doesn't
got to
work
5
anymore.
meters, it's not cutting anymore.
That's really not.
It's a lot easier to grip, 440 and learn how to pole vault than it is to work on your speed so that you can grip 470.
Every virus is magnified the higher you hold.
Yeah. Any mistake you make, the stiffer the pole, the higher the grip is exponentially wrong.
Right. Yeah.
And the other thing to see the forest for the trees is people have told you, wow, you cleared 445 by a mile. Well then, photocopy that vault. It's like Ty, we were fighting at Livermore, Ty likes to get in the kitchen. And, boy, he was fighting like hell to trust it. And he was like, move standards, change poles and whatnot. And, Brad and I were kind of like, man, if you just vault, you're going to be okay. And he clears 555, and if we weren't there, Ty would have changed poles, changed grip, and got stood up, I guarantee. There's a right pole, there's a right grip, there's a right flex for your health on that coming jump. I've seen Buka go down poles into me. Weather changed, he didn't fight it out, man. He's just like, I got to clear this bar, get this check, next stop. I bet you if you talk to Steve Chappell, Buka cleared 590 to 6 meters 1,000,000 times on 1,000,000 different flexes. Like, I was in a meet in Malmo where he jumped 605, was it?
It was 607 maybe?
Yeah. He didn't bring his big cannons because it was an in-between meet, kind of an exhibition. And the meet promoter saw him jumping. He's like, I'll give you an additional bonus if you clear X. And he didn't have his cannon, but he was vaulting pretty good, and the wind came in that day, and it was a beautiful day by Swedish standards. And, it was a huge bar. He cleared it like, boom, and it was on his, go pick up the check poles. It wasn't any of his cannons. The neat thing about buying into the idea that there's a unique grip and a unique flex for how I'm running today is it takes a lot of pressure off of it.
Yeah.
It's like, I can get in on this pole, I know that.
Right.
I can make some mistakes and still clear decent bars. Sometimes if you just give yourself that freedom, you'll jump pretty high that day.
Yeah.
Does it sound familiar at all? I was telling her when she was measuring your poles in there that I jumped in Paris on borrowed poles, and that was the day that I realized that 0.3 or 0.6 difference, it doesn't really matter because I jumped 580 on the smallest pole I've ever. I didn't think I'd clear 580 on it, and when I did, it was like poles 0.6 tenths doesn't really matter. It all depends on how you feel that day. Because if you run a little bit slower, but you're doing the same things technically, that 12.7 is going to act stiffer than it normally does because you don't have the same speed, so it's going to release closer to vertical, and you're going to get thrown by it a little bit more.
Makes sense.
And then you guys are always a work in progress, so there's always going to be some viruses.
Right.
And like you said, if you're down a pole and down a grip, you can get away with those viruses. And maybe fix some things at the top and get a nice vault. But if you're on a little stiffer pole, a little higher grip, and those same viruses exist, That pole may just not move enough where you bail on it.
Yeah. Okay.
Did you talk to Carly at all?
She called me, I haven't